There are 3 anime that are more special to me than any other anime out there. One is Your Lie in April, which we're gonna have to wait until I talk about that one. The second is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which I've talked about briefly before, and the third is Oregairu. I love Oregairu so much. I fell in love with it when I first watched it. The characters are more complex than any other romance I've ever seen, and the story is perfectly written. But because I love this series so much, I'm a little scared to make this video. Am I gonna be able to do it justice? Well, there's only one way to find out. But first, this coffee's too bitter. The full title of the series is Yahari Ore no Seishun Love Comedy wa Machigatoru, or as is translated for the light novels, My Youth Romantic Comedy is Wrong as I Expected, and the anime translates it to My Teen Romantic Comedy SNAFU, which makes it one of the few anime that has a swear word in the title, but I just call it Oregairu. Anyways, the series is written by Wataru and illustrated by Ponkin8. The light novels began serializing in March of 2011, and it was concluded in November of 2019 with Volume 14. However, there is a Volume 14.5 which released in April of 2021, and that came out after the conclusion of the anime. Speaking of anime, Season 1 aired from April 2013 to June 2013, and it was animated by the studio Brains Base. Other known anime that they worked on are Durarara, Inspector, and To Your Eternity. However, Season 2, which aired from April 2015 to June 2015, and Season 3, which aired from July 2020 to September 2020, was animated by the studio Phil. Other known works of theirs are Spy Classroom, Tsukigakure, and Makura no Danshi. Fans of mine should recognize that last one. Because of the change in studio, Season 1 looks way different compared to Seasons 2 and 3. It definitely looks like it was made in 2013. It doesn't look bad, but it definitely looks less polished. But this does give it a sense of style and makes it look unique when compared to other shows. In contrast, Seasons 2 and 3 look gorgeous. The colors are vibrant, the characters look solid, and some of these backgrounds are masterclasses, but it looks very similar to some other romance anime out there. I don't have a preference either way with which art style I like more. They both have their advantages and disadvantages, and both still look good. Anyway, let's get back to those dates that I was talking about earlier. The first episode aired in 2013, and the last episode aired in 2020. That's 7 years you would have to wait to see the conclusion if you started watching from the beginning. Heck, even I had to wait, and I started watching in March of 2020. Fun fact, if you notice, both Season 1 and 2 aired their first episodes in April, and that was the plan for Season 3, but thanks to the vid, it got delayed. In the early days of the pandemic, I was having a blast staying inside and watching anime. And one of those anime was Oregairu. And I was really invested and I was super excited to see the conclusion. And then it got delayed and I was livid. You can take away my ability to go outside, but the second you take my anime from me, it's war. Anyway, I've been going on for a while and I haven't even talked about the actual plot, so how about we do that? Much better. Youth is lies, youth is evil. Those who incessantly celebrate their teenage years are lying both to themselves and to those around them. These people interpret everything in their environment as an affirmation of their beliefs, and when they make mistakes that prove fatal, they see those very mistakes as proof of the value of the teen experience, looking back on it all as part of a beautiful memory. Their assertions are nothing but an excuse. Their principles are based entirely on their own convenience. Thus, their principles are deceit. Lies, deceit, secrets, and fraud are all reprehensible things. These people are evil, and that means, paradoxically, that those who do not celebrate their teenage years are correct and righteous. In conclusion, you normies can go die in a fire. This is the sentiment held by high schooler Hikigaya Hachiman, or Hickey, which is what I will be calling him for the rest of this video. Hickey is a loner, and he always has been. He doesn't spend time with any of his classmates, and he isn't part of any clubs. But after reading that essay that I just read, his teacher, Miss Hiratsuka, takes him to join the service club. The service club is newly formed and only has one member, the club president, Yukino Yukinishida. When the two first meet, Yukino is silently reading a book, alone, just like Hickey. The two do not get along at first, and Hickey does not want to join the club at all, but Miss Hiratsuka forces it and even sets up a little competition. Whoever can help the most people can make the other do whatever they want. The two agree, and the service club is formed under these unorthodox conditions. The competition doesn't get brought up much, especially since Yukino and Hickey work together in most scenarios, but it is super important in establishing the relationship between these two. See, they both think of themselves as self-sufficient, and Yukino is beautiful and smart, so she should be able to solve any problem that comes to the club room, so why does she need Hickey? The competition gives them both a reason to want to work together. See, most people would just happily go along or begrudgingly decide to work together, but not these two. They both have different than normal personalities, so setting up their friendship this way is perfect for these two characters. Their first task is to help a girl by the name of Yui Yuigahama, who is voiced by my birthday twin, Nao Toyama. Yui is a very energetic girl in Hickey's class. She is part of the popular crowd and never interacts with him, but then again, no one does. Yui's problem is that she wants to make cookies for someone, but she is really bad at it. This is where we first see the differences in Yukino and Hickey's philosophies. Yukino tries to teach Yui, citing that the only way for Yui to improve is for her to learn. However, as Yukino gets fed up with Yui's inability to cook, Hickey steps in with a different suggestion. His suggestion is just to go with the cookies as is, claiming that it doesn't matter if they're good or not, whoever she gives them to will appreciate them regardless. This is a very pessimistic approach and doesn't really solve the issue. Yui still sucks at cooking, a trait she will keep for the rest of the series. But where Yukino took the harder and more logical route, Hickey took the easier and more twisted route. Only someone with Hickey's view of the world would willingly give someone bad cookies as a present, but I would be wrong to say that he doesn't have a bit of a point. After getting help from the service club, Yui decides to join, and the three continue to help those who come asking. Characters like Hayato Hayama, the most popular kid in Hickey's class, Saki Kawasaki, a delinquent who cares deeply about her siblings, Saika Totsuka, captain of the tennis club, who Hickey has a massive crush on despite both of them being dudes, and Yoshiteru Zaimokuza, Hickey's only friend who has Chunibyo. See, everyone thinks they're like Hickey because they're cool and edgy loners, but I think I'm like Hickey because all my friends are like Zaimokuza. The extended cast is very important to the overall plot of the series, and I will definitely be bringing them up more as we continue, but even with this extended cast, the series is still able to focus on the main three and their relationship. It is a little obvious in the beginning, but Yui has a crush on Hickey, and things get awkward when Yui sees Yukino and Hickey out on a date together. But in reality, the two are just picking out a present for Yui's birthday. This is the beginning of the love polygon that is at the core of Oregairu. Oh, hi, and welcome to Devin's Book Corner. As a long-time reader of the light novels, I know the differences between the text and the anime. So, in this segment, I will be explaining these differences. Volume 3 is changed quite a bit in adaptation. Only about a quarter of this book is actually used. In the anime, Yui discovers Hickey and Yukino together while they are shopping for her birthday present. But in the light novel, Yui discovers the two of them at a pet fair together, which that's completely coincidental that those two are together there at that time. But at the end of the pet fair, Yukino asks Hiki to accompany her shopping for Yui's present, and Yui does not appear while they are shopping. Now, the date is kept relatively intact in the anime from the light novel, but there is one thing that they cut. It was Hiki winning a stuffed animal for Yukino out of a crane game. And the anime does add this back in as a flashback in season 3, which is a trend that they keep up with the things that they gloss over that should have been in season 1. Then we get to the back half of the volume, which is 100% cut from the anime, other than the very end. What is cut is a game of Strip Daifugo, which is similar to the game President. The game is played by the Service Club plus Saimokusa against the UG Club. And the UG Club actually do make an appearance later on in season 3, but the anime just treats it as if this is the first time we're meeting these characters. The game is actually super funny, but not very necessary to the overall plot. There is an added layer of suspense and humor as Hiki keeps losing on purpose in order to take the brunt of the stripping so that the other girls don't have to take their clothes off. At the end of the game, Yukino is convinced that her and Yui have lost, so she starts to take her clothes off, to the excitement of the boys, Hiki included. Yui throws her hands over Hiki's eyes, telling him not to look, and then she explains to Yukino that through a convoluted house rule they all agreed to at the beginning, they actually won. I understand why this got cut, but it would have been cute to see it animated. And then, at the end of the volume, we get the part where Hiki gives Yui her present. She puts it on, and Hiki thinks it looks good, but it's actually a dog collar. Now, this is in the anime, but I'm bringing it up because of an interesting part of narration. The black leather adorning her white neck struck a lovely contrast with her brown hair in the radiance of the setting sun. It suited her perfectly. Wait, brown hair? But Yui's hair is pink, or at least orange. Watari does this really interesting thing with Yui's hair where he keeps describing it with a different color. Sometimes it's brown, sometimes it's pink, and sometimes it's pinkish brown or pinkish orange. This inconsistency is consistent throughout the whole volume. And I think it's Watari implying that Yui dyes her hair and then it fades over time and then she re-dyes it. So I'm sure that if I was paying attention, I would notice it going from pink to pinkish brown to brown and then back to pink as the dye fades. This is a really neat detail that you wouldn't know about if you just watched the anime because this is not reflected in the anime at all. Hiki giving Yui a dog collar for a birthday present seems really strange until you realize that Yui's dog Sable...
Sorry! Was Sable bothering you too? Oh, Yui got Hama. Huh? What? Hiki?
It's Sable? I thought it was Sable, like the cookie.
Has a habit of breaking loose. And on Hiki's first day of school, as he was riding his bike, a dog broke loose of its owner's leash and headed right for a car. And Hiki drove his bike right in the middle of the two. The dog was Sable, and the cookies that Yui was baking at the beginning were meant for Hiki. We learn a lot from this revelation. The first is Hiki's willingness for self-sacrifice. Of all his posturing about not caring about other people, Hiki is quick to put himself on the line, be that his physical body or his reputation, as we'll see later. He easily does this because he doesn't believe that anybody cares about him. Hold on to that, it'll be important later. The other important thing we learn is how the relationship between our leads is formed. Hiki and Yui are connected because of a car crash, which is an awkward way to start a relationship. And because of Hiki's personality, he believes that Yui is only being nice to him because she pities him. So he tells her flat out to leave him alone if that's the case. Hiki is all alone because he pushes everyone around him away. Oregairu is about relationships more than any other romance anime I have seen. We get a good example of that with Hayama's introduction, where he's trying to figure out who in his friend group is making mean comments about the others. We never find out who it was, but that's not important. The importance is to get the audience thinking about relationships and applying that thinking to the service club. Oregairu is full of subtext. Everything hints at something else. This is really smart on Wateri's part, because he's not spelling everything out, but you still understand the point he's trying to make as he alludes to other characters. The best example of this is the camping trip and how it informs us on Yukino's character. Miss Hiratsuka forces Hiki to join on a volunteer opportunity by using Bestamoto Kamachi to get him out of the house. The job is helping out at a kindergarten camping trip. The group going along with Hiki and Kamachi are the other members of the service club, Hayama and his friend group, Tobe, Miura, Ebina, and best boy Totsuka, which Hiki is very excited about. At the camp, the conflict is introduced. There is a girl named Rumi Surumi. Man, Watari really loves his alliteration, doesn't he? Hey, wait a minute. Rumi is outcasted by the other members in her class, and she is all alone. The only ones who interact with her are Yukino and Hiki, two outcasts themselves. The high schoolers all brainstorm ideas on how to help the girl out. It would be easy if everyone got along, but that isn't how the world works. Not even the high schoolers were getting along, because Miura and Yukino got into an argument with Miura saying that Yukino was cold and thought she was better than everyone else. And in my opinion, she is. Rumi and Yukino are very similar, and this interaction is meant to show us that. Later, Hayama explains that he wants to try and help Rumi, and Yukino responds back with, "Like you did before." This shows that there is history between these two characters, and also that this is how Yukino ended up in the situation that she is currently in. Yukino isolated the people around her until she found that she was the one isolated herself, just like Rumi. After the altercation, we get a scene that sort of baffles me. I think I understand it, but I'm not 100% sure on it. Hiki goes out of the tent at night because sleeping next to Totsuka is too stimulating for him, and then he stumbles upon Yukino in the middle of the woods singing like a Disney princess, which is fitting for her because she actually loves Disney, or Destiny as it's called in the light novels. The conversation they have is pretty standard. Yukino says that she wants to help out Rumi and says that it is because she thinks that Rumi is like Yui, which Hiki is confused by because Rumi is obviously like Yukino. But nonetheless, the two decide to help Rumi out, and then the two go their separate ways. This isn't an odd scene, but everything in this series is deliberate, and I can't really understand why it's here. The only thing that I can think of is that this is the moment where Hiki first develops feelings for Yukino. This scene has a ton of romantic undertones, and this is one of the only moments early on where this happens. Sure, the two have their date from earlier, but it doesn't feel the same. But honestly, I could be wrong that this is the moment where Hiki first starts liking Yukino. Speaking of romantic feelings, before the scene with Yukino singing, which, by the way, in the light novel is accompanied by this gorgeous artwork, we get a scene that is skipped in the anime, but is actually really crucial in hindsight. Remember, everything in Oregairu is important, so a lot of things that get skipped in the anime need to get added in as flashbacks later, which this does get added in Season 2 when appropriate. The scene is Tobe admitting to having a crush on Ebina, the Fujoshi with glasses that him and Hayama are friends with. After Tobe admits this, he tries to get Hayama to admit to who he has a crush on. Hayama's not budging, but Tobe does get him to give a first letter, and the letter he gives is Y. And this letter can apply to 3 characters in the cast. Yui, Yumiko, which is Miura's given name, and of course, Yukino. Now, it's not stated who Hayama is talking about, but it it becomes pretty clear later who he might be talking about. There's also a part in here that is only funny to me because I am an English speaker. On the final night of the camping trip, they're holding a test of courage for the kids. More on that later. But while the high schoolers are setting up, they need to occupy the kids. And so they decide to do this. In the end, we just weren't any good at telling tales of fright, so we unanimously agreed that we would play the Ghost Stories DVD that someone had left at the lodge. Ghost Stories is an anime that adapts several ghost stories from Japanese folklore. Think of Scooby-Doo, but anime. Now, this anime didn't do great in Japan, so when it was being localized in the West, the studio was allowed to do whatever it wanted. And infamously, the studio decided to turn Ghost Stories into South Park. So, in Watsuri's head, these kindergartners are watching this.
Timeは0.2秒縮まりました。
But in my head, because of what I know Ghost Stories to be, these kindergartners are watching this.
Think of a big black man chasing you! Well, he's not racist.
I guess not. He's only 0.2 seconds faster.
This literally only works because it's Ghost Stories. The test of courage is an opportunity to see how Hickey solves problems. Hickey's idea for how to solve Rumi's isolation is by singling out the girls who aren't including Rumi and having Miura and Tobei yell at them during the test of courage. It's a little messed up of a plan, but it allows Rumi to shine by saving the day. Hickey's idea perfectly shows off his twisted worldview. Nobody else likes his idea, as we can see from them all complaining about it, and Hickey's idea doesn't even work, as we'll see in Season 2. Hickey solves all the problems brought before him in a similar way, and it helps inform the audience on his personality. Hickey thinks the world is a cruel place, and we see that and know that through his actions. This series has a ton of setup, especially in Season 1. But romantic comedy is in the name, so there are a good amount of rom-com tropes that are used. There isn't a dedicated beach episode, but the camping trip does give us an excuse to see the characters in swimsuits, and all the other characters console Yukino, which, don't worry Yukino, you're perfect just the way you are. Flat is justice. And of course, there was also the aforementioned date episode between Hickey and Yukino, but where's the Yui love? Well, we get plenty of that after the camping trip when Yui and Hickey go to see the fireworks together, which is a very common rom-com trope. After the camping trip, Hickey and Yukino don't see each other at all, which helps to show that there is distance between the two. And on top of that, the two of them are not good with personal relationships, so they probably wouldn't seek out meeting the other anyway. However, Hickey and his little sister Komachi have been watching Sable for Yui, and when Yui goes to pick her dog up, she asks if the two want to go see the fireworks with her. At the fireworks, Komachi runs off, leaving Hickey and Yui alone. Komachi Hikigaya is the best wingwoman, not just in this series, but in anime as a whole. Her giving these two some time alone definitely helps the series feel more like a romance, especially when we get a moment where someone asks if the two of them are dating. Classic romance trope. But the mood is sort of ruined when Haruno Yukinashita shows up. Haruno first appears while Hickey and Yukino are on their date. Haruno is 100% the villain of this series. She is mischievous, conniving, and always inserts herself into the relationship between the three leads. Whenever she shows up, it is never a good sign, and this moment is no exception. For starters, this is Haruno's first introduction to Yui, so now she knows that Hickey isn't just spending time with her sister, but this other girl as well. And we also find out something major from Haruno. The car that hit Hickey when he saved Sable belongs to the Yukinoshita family, and Yukino was in the car when it happened. Part of Hickey's personality is that he doesn't have much regard for other people's feelings, or so he claims. He thinks that holding the truth from someone just because it will hurt them is stupid. And he thinks that Yukino is the same way, but this disproves that. There is no reason why Yukino couldn't have told Hickey that she was involved in the accident, but she didn't. So now we know that Yukino is willing to hide things to preserve other people's feelings, which is very important for the series as a whole. Yukino being involved in the crash is very significant. The series definitely earns its title because all three of the main characters are connected because of a car crash. But there isn't a lot of significance put onto it. Watari is very subtle with this, so you really have to think about it a lot in order to pull meaning out of it. Another reason it isn't brought up a lot is because of our narrator, Hickey. The series is written in first person, so all the narration is Hickey's inner thoughts. And Hickey loves to go on tangents, and this is to tip us off that he is avoiding an issue, and he does this a lot. So, the crash not being brought up is because Hickey doesn't want to think about it. Either he's moved on and he doesn't want to dwell on the past, or he just doesn't want to think about it all that much. After summer, we move on to the Cultural Festival, which is the final arc of Season 1. It isn't packed with a lot of action, but it is very important to understanding the characters and series as a whole. Meguri Shiramaguri, the student council president, needs the service club's help in regard to the head of the Cultural Fest committee, Sagami. Sagami isn't doing great at her job, and nobody is calling her out on it. So, Yukino ends up shouldered with a lot of work, and it ends up making her miss school because of the stress. Yukino is a hard worker and always wants to help out. But she has a weak constitution, which we found out about during a tennis game that I didn't mention. Yukino's willingness to push herself past her limits is admirable, but the self-sacrifice is a little concerning and is actually similar to Hickey. But sometimes Hickey's self-sacrifice doesn't always come off as helpful. Sometimes it can come off as hurtful. On the day of the cultural festival, Sagami is missing when she needs to give the closing ceremony. To stall for time, Yukino, Yui, Miss Hiratsuka, Haruno, and Meguri form a band because this is an anime from the 2010s. While the girls are rocking out, Hickey goes in search of Sagami and finds her on the roof. Sagami is sad because she let everyone down. Her friends and Hayama also appear and give her encouragement, but it's not working and time is running out. So, Hickey uses his own methods and insults Sagami. He calls her garbage and says that no one was actually looking for her. And as Hickey verbally insults her, Hayama slams Hickey into a wall to stop him, showing that Hayama and Hickey have very different ways of solving problems. Hickey yelling at Sagami is another example of Hickey sacrificing himself. Hickey is now the bad guy who yelled at Sagami, no matter how much she deserved it. People would still think that this is a bad thing to do, but Hickey doesn't care about your feelings. And at the end of the day, it did still work, but it was at the cost of his reputation. And Miss Hiratsuka tells him that even if he doesn't think that there are people who care about him, there actually are people who do care. Season 1 is good. Not great, but good. I skipped over a ton because there is a lot of character introductions and showing off and establishing the relationship between characters. But this is definitely to the benefit of Oregairu. Oregairu is all about the relationship within the service club, and the distance between the members is shown off perfectly. Not just metaphorically, but also physically. In the clubroom, Yukino and Yui sit next to each other on one end of the table, and Hiki sits on the opposite side very far away. This shows that Yui and Yukino are close, and Hiki isn't, and he is furthest from Yukino because they aren't very close. But as Season 2 rolls around, we see the relationship in the service club change. The second year's trip to Kyoto is right around the corner, and everyone is excited, especially Yui as her and Yukino plan their trip, and Hiki is even asked for his opinions. Then Tobei enters the clubroom with a request. But he doesn't want Hiki to hear, which mirrors when Yui first appeared and Yukino kicked Hiki out of the room because Yui said she didn't want him there. So when Tobei requests that Hiki not be present, Yukino responds with, "Forgive my asking, but would you leave?" And as Hiki stands up, Yukino asks him where he was going and says that she was talking to Tobei. Yukino defending Hiki and the three members of the service club planning their trip together shows that they are getting closer, and it is really sweet to see these three getting along. However, things are about to change after the Kyoto trip. Tobei's request has to do with him liking Ebina, which I brought up earlier. During the Kyoto trip, Tobei plans to confess to Ebina, and he wants the help of the service club. The club agrees to help, and after Tobei leaves, Ebina walks in with a request of her own. After going on about Hiki and the other boys in her class doing X-rated activities, she finally gets to her point. She says that she hopes everyone gets along like they always have. Relationships can be complicated, especially when you have a group of friends and then you insert romantic feelings. It can change the whole dynamic and sometimes even ruin a friendship if things don't work out. This is Ebina's fear. She doesn't like Tobei back. And she's afraid that if she rejects him, they'll stop being friends and the friend group will break apart. Miura also shares this same sentiment, and she shares this with Hiki while the two of them are at a convenience store. Miura doesn't want the group to split up. She wants things to stay exactly the same as they are. It isn't apparent at the moment, but Miura is mirroring Hiki in this moment. Watari will use Miura's feelings / Hayama's friend group to inform our understanding on the relationship that is happening within the service club. So pay attention to Miura's feelings because it will come up later. In order to fulfill Ebina and Miura's wishes, Hiki interrupts Tobei's confession by doing his own fake confession, which Ebina declines by saying that she isn't looking for a relationship yet, so that Tobei can know that she would have rejected him too. So Hiki's plan is effective. Tobei knows that Ebina isn't interested and things can remain the same between the friend group. However, Hiki's plan didn't take into account the feelings of two other people present, Yukino and Yui. Yukino is furious, telling Hiki that she hates the way he does things and storms off, while Yui stays with Hiki, but she starts crying and asks him to never do anything like that again. Hiki sacrifices himself again. He steals Tobei's spotlight and embarrasses himself. But he didn't think about what else he would be sacrificing. Yukino and Yui both like our boy, and seeing him confess his feelings to someone else upset them, even if it was just a ruse. Because what would happen if Hiki confessed to one of them? Yukino and Yui are great friends. In fact, Yui is Yukino's only friend. So them both having a crush on the same boy is a problem, because what would happen if he confessed to one of them like he confessed to Ebina? So they both put distance between themselves and Hiki before he can thoughtlessly ruin their friendship. After the trip, things are awkward in the clubroom. Gone are the days of everyone getting along. The reality of this frail relationship has finally set in. Having the club be perfectly fine at the beginning of the trip and then having it brought to its lowest point right after it is a shocking juxtaposition. It really shows just how dire things are, especially since Hiki and Yukino aren't talking. So that means it's time for a new character. Meguri comes to the service club with yet another request. It is about the student council elections, which only has one person running. First year, Iroha Ishiki. Ishiki is very cute, and so because of this, she gets singled out and forced to run by some classmates, hoping to embarrass her. She doesn't want to drop out because that would be admitting defeat, and she doesn't want to win by a vote of no confidence because it would hurt her image publicly. So the only way is for someone to run against her and win. Yukino and Yui both agree to run, and if one of them won, it would spell the end of the service club. Yukino and Yui are both willing to throw this relationship away. They are willing to put distance between themselves and Hiki so that it won't hurt the other. But that's what they want. What does Hiki want? After discussing it with his sister, Hiki decides that he wants the service club to stay together, just like with Miura during the Kyoto trip. See, told you it would be important later. He wants Yukino and Yui to stay as friends, and of course, he'll be there too. Komachi helps gather a team of Zaimokuza, Totsuka, and Kawasaki to help with Hiki's plan to keep the club together. Hiki's character goes through a lot of growth throughout the series. The most obvious is his willingness to get help from others. Not only is he honest with his sister about what happened on the Kyoto trip, but with her help, he is able to enlist the help of his classmates. The plan the crew comes up with is a devious one, like all of Hiki's plans. I won't bore you with the details, but he tricks Ishiki into wanting to be the student council president by making her think a lot of people wanted her to do it. He used his methods again. And when he tells Yukino and Yui what he did, he conveniently left that part out. So the service club is allowed to stay together, and everything worked out. But remember, things in the club weren't that great before the student council elections, and nothing really happened to change that. So things don't progress as smoothly afterwards. Before we move on from the student council elections, the anime glosses over something that is right at the end of Volume 8. See, it is hinted at that Yukino actually wanted to be the student council president the whole time, but she just didn't know how to say it. And Hiki, with his selfishness, stopped her from being able to do it, and he messed things up for her. Hiki's selfishness and not wanting to admit his true feelings really screwed things up for Yukino, and it's clear in the anime that Hiki's very selfish, but this just adds one more layer to that, because if Hiki was honest, then everything should have been fine. But to be fair, Yukino should have been honest too. The atmosphere in the clubroom is awkward. Yes, Yukino and Yui are talking more naturally than post the Kyoto trip, but you can tell that Yukino is forcing things to be normal. This isn't right. This isn't what Hiki wanted when he tried to keep the club together. He messed up big time. And now there was a new problem. Iroha Ishiki, the girl who Hiki forced to be student council president, needs his help. Hiki throughout the series has solved a majority of the problems with his methods. Yes, the service club is still together and the student council has a president. Yay! But Iroha asking for help here shows that there is doubt that she can actually do it properly. This is directly Hiki's fault. So Hiki takes responsibility and helps her out, proving that Hiki can care for the feelings of others. Iroha needs help with a joint Christmas event with another school. The other school is making things difficult with the way they are going about brainstorming the event. It keeps getting bigger and bigger without any work being put into it. We also see a familiar face return, Rumi. Rumi returning fits the theme of seeing if Hiki's methods actually work. When we see Rumi, she is all alone, just like when we last saw her. Another one of Hiki's failures. Hiki needs to make a decision quick. Things are going nowhere with this event, and his methods are being put up to question. So he goes to the service club to ask for help. Hiki sits down directly across from Yukino and Yui and says that he has a request. He knows they won't understand him, so he desperately wants to not say anything, but that's impossible. How can you explain something without words? And yet, Hiki wishes for understanding without being constricted by words. He wishes that a relationship like this could exist, but it's impossible. It's selfish. And yet, Hickey wants this. And he says to the two girls that what he wants is something real. And he says this with tears rolling down his cheeks as the sunset shines through the clubroom windows. This scene is breathtaking. Hickey is awful at communicating his feelings, and this is the best he can manage. His "I want something real" line is so vague and so hypocritical, but it says so much about his character. He doesn't want the awkwardness of the service club. He wants a relationship where they can be open, but he is still part of the problem. Even now, he won't say what he truly wants, which fits his personality to a T, but it still shows emotional growth because this is the most vulnerable he's been the entire series. Him crying his eyes out is so powerful and shows just how hard this is on him. It adds a really important weight to this scene, which I love. It is impossible for me to watch or read the genuine scene without bursting into tears myself. This scene is one of the reasons why Oregairu will forever be one of my favorites. After that amazing scene, Yukino and Yui come along to help with the event, and they see how close Iroha and Hickey have gotten, as Iroha easily hands over a bag for Hickey to carry, like they have done every day. Yukino and Yui are visibly jealous, and we are reminded of the word romantic in the title. The romance elements are super subtle in the first half of season 2, but as the season continues, there are a lot more romance tropes that pop up, and the first of which happens at a trip to a certain theme park. In Oregairu, Yukino loves this little panda character, which the anime calls Pansen. And the theme park they go to in the anime is themed completely after this character. They kind of treat him like Mickey Mouse, but that's the anime. In the light novel, they call him Guinea the Grue, a spoof off of Winnie the Pooh. And the theme park they go to is called Destinyland. And the theme park has rides such as Space Galaxy Mountain and Splosh Mountain. There is only one ride that is themed after Guinea the Grue, which Yukino is very excited to ride, which is very, very cute. Speaking of Yukino being cute this trip, there are a ton of great Yukino moments. Yukino is my favorite character, so it's great to see her enjoying herself having fun. And there is even a great Yukino and Hickey shipping moment that happens in this part as well. Yukino and Hickey get separated from the rest of the group and go on a ride together. Yukino is terrified because her sister used to torment her on roller coasters when they were kids. And just when I thought I was out of reasons to dislike Haruno, at the start of the drop, Yukino asks Hickey to save her one day, and Hickey is dumbfounded as the ride photo is taken. Yukino is a lonely girl who thinks she is strong, but she is frail. She has her limits, like we see in the cultural festival. Even if she thinks she can do things all by herself, she can't. Her going to Hickey for help is a big moment. It shows a level of trust, but it also shows more weakness. As I stated before, this part is where we get the most romantic moments, and the trend will continue as the Christmas event ends and we move into New Year's and Valentine's Day. First, New Year's. It is relatively incident-free, but rumors start going around about Yukino and Hayama dating because they were seen together. They were together because of their families, but the gossip is still there. Oregairu is very subtle, and no part demonstrates that more than this one right here. Hickey refuses to address the rumors in his narration at all. Why? Because he doesn't want to acknowledge them, because they make him jealous. This is such a smart way to hint at Hickey's feelings without being super obvious about them. But this does make the rumors seem not as important overall. Also in this part is another request by Miura. She continues to play her role as a mirror for Hickey by not wanting her clique to split up when they become third years. Sobu Municipal High School, the high school that all the kids in Oregairu go to, is a college prep school. So in your third year, you pick whether to go into sciences or arts. And Miura wants to go into the same track as Hayama. But Hayama refuses to tell anybody what track he is going into. He doesn't want to influence Miura's decision. He wants her to be her own person. He doesn't want her to depend on him. Hickey ends up forcing an answer on Hayama by cornering him during the school marathon. He does this by running full force in order to catch up to Hayama, who is the literal captain of the soccer team. Hickey eventually collapses from exhaustion and gets sent to the nurse's office where Yukino is, and the two share a tender and romantically tense moment as Yukino patches up Hickey's leg. Hickey running so fast that he passes out is another classic example of Hickey's self-sacrifice, but this time, Yukino is there to pick him up. He got hurt, and she's there to patch him up. He is now depending on her. This is a great shipping moment between these two, but my all-time favorite romantic moment in Oregairu makes use of one of my favorite romance anime tropes: Valentine's Day. Before Valentine's Day, the service club sets up an event where the members of the cast can learn to make chocolates. It is really adorable, and it is very obvious that Yukino and Yui are both making chocolates for our boy. But of course, things can't be nice on this show forever. On Valentine's Day proper, Hickey, Yukino, and Yui all go to the aquarium together. Things are great! They look at the penguins, Yukino meows at a shark. It's a fun day! But as the sun sets, Yui asks about what they're going to do to resolve everything. Yui seems to have an answer in mind, but Hickey interrupts. But before we get to hear his answer, he gets cut off by the ending credits. And that is where Oregairu left its audience for 5 years. On a cliffhanger. And seeing as how Season 2 ramps up the romance elements, you definitely want to see more. But thankfully, Season 3 does exist. And Season 3 is the exact reason why Oregairu is my third favorite anime of all time. Season 3 immediately picks up where we left off, with Hickey, Yukino, and Yui contemplating how they are going to continue. Yukino wants to find her answer for herself. And Yui, well... In the volumes, oftentimes there are these interludes, and Watari is very vague at explaining whose perspective we're in. You have to use context clues to figure out who the narrator is. In Volume 12, all of the interludes are from Yui's perspective, and in the opening interlude, we hear Yui explain that she is selfish and that she never wanted something real. Yui is a people pleaser. She always goes with the crowd. We see that a lot with her interactions with Miura in Season 1, and despite Miura and Yukino not being friends, she continues to be friends with both of them. So, if we take a look at her relationship with Yukino and her feelings for Hickey, we can see that these two things might not be able to exist together, but Yui wants that. She wants to be with Hickey but still be friends with Yukino, but the fear is that that won't be able to happen. The only way for that to happen is if Yukino gives up on her feelings for Hickey, which is what Yui wants and is what she is hinting at the end of Season 2. And Hickey, he doesn't have an answer at the moment, but he wants to find it. But things get complicated when Haruno Yukinishida tells him one word that strikes fear in the hearts of Oregairu fans. Codependency. Yes, the relationship between Yukino, Yui, and Hickey is a classic love triangle, but Haruno is twisted, just like Hickey, so she sees something more twisted about the relationship. Yukino's only friend is Yui, and Yui gets the attention from Yukino, which she likes. Yukino gets someone to help her out in the form of Hickey, and Hickey gets someone to save in the form of Yukino. and Yui gets to hang out with the guy that she likes, and Hickey gets to have someone else to save, and also another friend in the form of Yui. Everybody gets something from someone else, which is not the basis for a healthy relationship. And this rings true for Hickey, and it complicates things a lot. But of course, there is another problem that the service club has to solve. Iroha wants to hold a prom as a going-away party for the seniors, and everything seems to be going smoothly until Yukino's mom gets in the way. Some parents are concerned about what the kids might get up to on prom night, so they want to shut the prom down, and they're going through Yuki Mom to do it. Yukino expresses the want to resolve this issue by herself because she wants to distance herself from Hickey, to make herself less reliant and to break the curse of codependency. Hickey doesn't argue and decides to go home with Yui, but he gets a call from Miss Hiratsuka, who asks Hickey about his feelings. Hickey is not straightforward with his feelings the entire series, but he is especially not honest in Season 3. There's a certain word that Hickey refuses to say this season, and Miss Hiratsuka is trying to get it out of him, but he won't say it. Hickey leaves Yui behind and runs to Yukino's side, and as Hickey leaves, Yui starts crying, which she does literally every other episode this season. Seriously, Yui cries in every even-numbered episode. You can check me. I'm right. As Hickey interrupts Iroha and Yukino's meeting, it is apparent that Yukino doesn't want him there, but Hickey still wants to solve the problem. And there is only one way to settle things when there is a disagreement. A contest. Oh yeah! Remember that contest from the beginning of the video? It's back, baby! And this is the end. Whoever's plan for the prom succeeds will be crowned the winner and can make the loser do whatever they want. This scene is so funny to me. Hickey and Yukino are so obviously flirting with each other as they issue this challenge, and Iroha does not want to be in the middle of these two flirting, especially since it seems that she has a crush on good old 8-Man herself. And speaking of girls that have a crush on Hickey, Yui helps out Hickey with his proposal for the prom, which is to come up with a fake prom that will obviously be a way worse idea than the real prom, so the PTA will decide to allow the actual prom to go on. Hickey also enlists a lot of other outside help. Obviously, he goes to Zaimokuza, and Zaimokuza helps by roping in the UG club, and Hickey even goes outside of his comfort zone and asks the other school from the Christmas event for help using his sick rapping skills. Hickey asking for help from classmates and even getting help from further outside of his circle shows a lot of growth, and it's very deserved. But the biggest help comes from Yui, who gets a ton of attention this season. Yui is by Hickey's side the whole time he is planning the dummy prom, so there are a lot of tender moments shared between the two. The best example of this is when they are in the internet cafe. The two get a small room to share, and while Hickey is working on something, Yui falls asleep on his shoulder. In an earlier part of this series, I'm sure Hickey would brush her off, but now he lets her be. But Yui isn't actually sleeping. We get narration explaining that Yui doesn't want this time to end. She wants it to continue because she's selfish. She wishes that they could stay like this, but she can't, because it all has to come to an end. Eventually, the PTA folds, and thanks to Hickey's bad prom proposal, the real prom is able to go forward. Hickey solved the problem again. But Hickey gives all the credit to Yukino. It was her plan that succeeded, so it should be her wish that gets granted. And in the most beautiful scene in Season 3, Yukino tells Hickey to grant Yui's wish. Yukino is a kind and selfless girl who lets her best friend have the boy they both like. She has found her solution, and it is to let Hickey go and find her own life. And Hickey agrees, and so he goes to meet with Yui. The start of Volume 14 has a part that I find super relatable, but it also highlights Wateri's writing style. After his talk with Yukino, the next morning, Hiki wakes up earlier than normal, and Komachi comments on this and asks him if he got enough sleep. Hiki says that he did and he feels rested, but we find out in the narration that Hiki was trying to figure out what to text Yui and he couldn't figure it out. And since he couldn't figure it out, he just started messing around on his phone and he couldn't really fall asleep. And judging from the last time he saw on his phone and the time that he knows he got up, he determines that he got about 4 hours of sleep. Every time I read this part, I get goosebumps. This is super relatable to me. I've been there. I know exactly what Hiki is going through, what he's feeling, and how stressed he is. But Watari, not once in the narration, explicitly describes what Hiki is feeling. He only describes his actions and the facts about the scenario. Yet, I still understand exactly what Hiki is feeling. This is the reason why I love Oregairu. The light novels are perfectly written.
Hiki and Yui spend a lot of time together after Yukino and Hiki have their talk. One example is them making tarts with Gahamama.
Praise be Gahamama, the best MILF in anime. And if you don't know what that is, I'll tell you what it is. It's a goddamn fact.
Anyway, as they are making the tarts, the superior Yui Gahama asks what the secret ingredient might be, which Hiki answers as being devotion. Told you he refuses to say love in this season. The prom eventually happens, and this leads to a moment where Hiki and Yukino can finally talk. Prior to this, they were avoiding each other, even going as far as to use Iroha to communicate when they were right in front of each other. Before prom, Hiki gets the rundown on how tech is going to work behind the scenes from Yukino, and we see that Hiki isn't able to get away from Yukino as easily as he thought.
And during prom, there is a scene from the light novel which gets cut, and this is the biggest sin that the anime has done. The scene that gets cut is simply known as the Romeo and Juliet scene. It features Hiki comparing him and Yukino to Romeo and Juliet as Hiki looks down at her from the booth. Two people who are destined to not be together. This scene is super poetic, especially when we see that Yukino is thinking the exact same way. This is a hint that these two feel the exact same way towards each other, and it is a shame that it's not included in the anime.
After prom, Haruno rears her ugly head, asking Hiki if he is satisfied with this conclusion, and Hiki doesn't have an answer, but leave it to Miss Hiratsuka to swoop in and make everything better. Miss Hiratsuka takes Hiki out to eat and explains something very important to Hiki. She takes a napkin and starts to write everything that she thinks about him, and some of these words aren't nice either, but she quickly scribbles all over the napkin, and left in the blank space is the Japanese word for love.
Haruno is the devil on Hiki's shoulder. She is always there to make him doubt himself and question whether things are going to work out. But Miss Hiratsuka is the angel on his shoulder. She is always there to give him advice, and this is her best advice yet, teaching him that love isn't easy. Love can be complicated. Love isn't always easy to define, and that's okay. And with that, Hiki has his answer.
Hiki and Yui meet at a park, and it is there on a park bench that Yui is about to tell him her wish, but before she can, Hiki explains that he doesn't want to lose Yukino, that even though they will see each other again, he isn't satisfied with those superficial relationships. He wants to be closer to her.
The bench scene is perfect. Hiki isn't good with talking to people, so obviously him and Yukino would lose touch, but he doesn't want that, and he honestly explains that to Yui. Now, He doesn't specifically state that he is picking Yukino over Yui, but she understands. She understands that she is rejected. And she takes it well in the moment, but later she goes home to cry her eyes out to Gahamama. And then we get the best, most important scene in all of Oregairu. But first, I need another coffee. In Oregairu, Hickey drinks a lot of coffee. Typically, the coffee he drinks is in this yellow can, which is called Max Coffee. Max Coffee is actually a real coffee brand, and it is very, very sweet. Now, when it comes to sweets in Japan, typically it is associated with femininity, but in Oregairu, it is associated with youth. Whenever Hickey is drinking a Max Coffee, he is having fun and enjoying himself. But Hickey doesn't always drink Max Coffee. Sometimes he is drinking black coffee. And whenever Hickey is shown drinking black coffee, we know that things are super serious and he's not having a good time. At the end of the Kyoto trip, when things are at their worst, Hickey is constantly drinking black coffee. But after he confides in Komachi and he actually comes up with a plan with how to keep the service club together, he starts drinking the Max Coffee again. I really love this way of telling us the tone without spelling it out, especially since Hickey is super cynical and it can be hard to tell when he's being positive or negative. But enough about coffee. Let's get back to talking about the series.
Things at the school are in a frenzy because Hickey made the site for the dummy prom public once again, making it seem like it was going to happen after all, and after a meeting with Yukino, Yukimom, and Haruno, Hickey convinces them to let him and Yukino make it happen. Yukino isn't happy. This isn't what was supposed to happen, but Hickey wants to do this together, and he tries to convince her as they cross the bridge over the national highway together. Hickey tells Yukino that he wants to be involved with her, and he doesn't want the club to go away either. Yukino asks him about Yui's wish that she told him to grant, and he says that this is her wish. The wish for things to continue. The wish that the days in the club room wouldn't end. Yukino says she will get better and try to keep in contact, but Hickey knows that it would be hard with the two of them. They aren't good with those kinds of relationships. They never were. Yukino turns to walk away, and she almost does, but Hickey isn't letting her get away. Not this time. Hickey says that this isn't about responsibility or obligation. It's desire. He wants to be by her side, and he asks for the privilege of distorting her life. Yukino is confused, saying that there is something else he should be saying, but Hickey has refused to say that word this entire season, and he isn't going to start now. It is a messy and complicated confession, but it fits with Hickey's personality, and even if he dances around the subject, you can still clearly get the message that Hickey wants to spend the rest of his life with Yukino, no matter what.
This scene is breathtaking, with Hickey reaching out to grab Yukino and her holding him as the music swells. This would be a perfect end to this series, but there is still more to come.
Hickey and Yukino go out to look for spots for the fake now real prom, and it is basically a date, and it is so cute. Look at how precious Yukino is. She even has her hair up like the first time these two went out together. After they pick the location, the second prom proceeds as planned with everyone's help, Yui included. As the night concludes, Miss Hiratsuka and Hickey dance together, and as Miss Hiratsuka leaves, she quotes Hickey's essay from the beginning about how youth is a lie, and Hickey cringes at the words, showing just how much he has grown. Finally, Hickey asks Yukino if there's anything else he needs to do before they go, and at the end of a list of jobs that Hickey needs to do, Yukino says, "I love you, Hickey-gaya." and 1,000 weebs cry out in joy as OP1 plays.
By the way, how are the OPs? OP1, it's good. OP2, it's good. OP3, it's good. I'm not crying.
At the final moments of the series, we see that the club is still together, as Komachi becomes the president in her first year, with Hiki and Yukino, who now sit next to each other, by the way, and even Yui as members. A happy ending to a beautiful story.
I love the ending of Oregairu. It makes me happy and sad all at the same time. In fact, I love all of Oregairu. The characters all have a purpose, and the story is beautifully executed. The series just celebrated its 10-year anniversary this year, and so that goes to show that it is still getting love. And I am very grateful that I was able to share my love of this series with all of you. And if you like this video, make sure to subscribe. 99% of people who watch my videos aren't subscribed. Make sure to leave a comment, leave a like, and with that, sayonara. In the end, we just weren't any good at telling tales of fright, so we unanimously... agreed that there's a typo in here and it's messing me up.